G'day guys, welcome to another episode of the Evolve Weekly. For this week's episode, we're going to give you some pro tips how to best corner and carve on your Evolve skateboard. So when it comes to carving, one of the things that I like to put in practice is basically I like to use my front arm, which is my leading arm as I'm riding, and I like to point it in the direction in which I want to carve to. So whether it's a heel side turn or a toe side turn, if you point in the direction you want to go, what happens is your shoulders, your upper body moves to that direction, and then your hips move, and then it just translates into the board going in that direction as well. It's a much easier way to ride.
When it comes to your stance when you're carving, basically you want to get your center of gravity as well as possible by bending your knees. It gets you down over the board better and gets a bit better stability. And then when you want to start carving, it's getting your weight over the balls of your feet or over the heel, and that's going to get the board to go where you want it to. Obviously, the faster you go, the more likely it is the board's going to slide out. The slower you go, it's going to be harder to keep your balance on a big carve. The main thing is though, keeping that speed constant while you're carving. It's going to be easier to control the board rather than changing it up and down too much. Keeping an eye on where you're going is a massive aspect of it as well. Obviously, you don't want to just ignore everything on the ground in front of you, but if you're looking at the ground, that's where you're going to wind up. You want to look where you're going, keep your eye on the goal, and sort of keep carving while you're sort of keeping your environment in your peripherals. So when we're looking at the different ways of carving, obviously if you're on a narrow path, you're going to be doing some tighter carves. It's going to be a lot quicker movement, it's going to be a lot faster pace. Obviously you've got less room to move in, so you're going to be a bit sharper in your movements and your actions. If you're on an open road or a bigger path, obviously you can have some nice wide carves. They're typically going to be a little bit smoother, a little bit more flowing. It comes down to personal preference.
So depending on the wheel setup that you have on your board at the time, the AT wheels will give you a lot more grip on a tarmac surface than the street wheels. And so if I'm doing hard carving and tight turns, I much prefer to use an AT wheel because I know that as I'm doing that sharp turn, the board will hold its course and will not slide underneath my feet. Whereas if I have a street wheel, I have to be more mindful of how tight and sharp that I do turn, because these will lose grip and they will slide at some point. So you need to understand what that release point is of the wheel as you're turning. Then it can be quite playful and fun because you can then keep finding that point, and then you can do little mini slides and little kickbacks as you're doing that sharp turn. But be warned, if you go too far, the board will do a complete 180.
When we're looking at cornering, obviously it's a kind of extended carve, I guess. So we're talking, bigger bends where you want to maintain your speed all the way through and holding that constant arc. It's really important here to sort of look where you're going. You want to keep looking through the corner. If you keep looking at one spot on the ground, you're going to lose it where you're going, and you're never going to be able to sort of just keep that one momentum all the way through. So you want to get comfortable on the board, maintain your speed, don't brake or accelerate too hard, and just keep looking at where you're going. Your stance over the board, whether you keep your weight up high or down low, plays a massive part on it. If you look at downhill races, all of them race in the same way. They all get their body weight low, they all tuck in tight. Obviously, this makes for a little bit safer situations when they're next to each other, but also it's easier for them to control the board. So if something does happen, they're more likely to be able to slide out with the board rather than actually go for a tumble. The lower you are, it might be worthwhile getting some slide gloves. So if you do need to put your hand out and get those tight turns in, you're not going to tear up your hands. If you are standing upright, you are going to have to move your body a lot further over your toe or your heel side to get the board to go where you want it to.
So for me, when I'm sort of lining up, getting into a turn, sort of get down, use those knees as your suspension, knuckle right down into it, and you find you can actually get real good control over, those big carves or those really tight turns.
So when you're trying to do tight cornering, this is where it starts getting a little bit more technical depending on what speed you're going. So obviously low speed, you can keep your body a lot more upright and you can get that board lean just by getting the weight over your heels on the balls of your feet. If you're going a lot faster, you're going to be able to sort of lean over the board a lot more. You're going to be able to get the board to turn, but this is when you start getting a higher chance of sliding depending on whether you're running all-terrain wheels or street wheels. When we're talking about riding in groups or even a racing environment, the biggest thing that's going to help you and others is making sure you can hold your line through corners. So whether you're on a BMX track, on a berm, or on a street ride going around corners, if you can hold your line through it and not sort of wander too far either way, the other riders are going to know what you're doing. It's going to be safer for you, safer for them, and everybody's going to be able to get through the corner that little bit better. When we start looking at surfaces to ride on, obviously grass, gravel and dirt are going to have a lot less traction. Every time you try and carve, you're going to get some sliding, you're going to get some slipping. It's going to be very similar to probably like a snowboard feel, but you've got to be prepared for it. Preparing for those off-road slides when you're trying to carve, it's basically knowing it's going to happen, preparing for it to happen and getting your body weight as low as possible so that you can counter it. You think if you're standing completely upright and the board wants to go out from under you, you're going to fall down, the board's going to keep going. If you're crouched down lower over the top of the board, there's a much better chance that you're going to be able to stay on the board and go with that slide and control it.
Thanks for watching, guys. Hope you enjoyed the video, and hopefully it's given you some good tips into how to best corner and carve on your Evolve board. Remember, if you've got any questions about the video, please put them in the comments below. Until next time, happy riding.